elections here. What are our needs? What do we have to do? Where are we needed? How are we going to keep them secure? And then the election potential stage afterwards.
The microphone is off.
How about now?
Yep, okay.
Well, thank you, Washtenaw Alliance, for giving me the opportunity to talk to you all today about election security. It is one of my favorite topics, and if you get tired of me droning on and on, first I wanted to say thank you to the presenters about Signal, because I just got a new phone, and it said, you need to kind of re-download the thing at all these times and redo your security settings. So, thank you for that reminder. Okay, so back to election security. If you at any moment get tired of me droning on, please step aside and consider looking at these election security posters that were produced by the Bureau of Elections. They follow what's called the journey of a vote, and they talk about the security steps at each point in the journey of the vote, from proof of eligibility to get registered to vote, through what we do with the ballot tabulator programming, the logic and accuracy testing, and then they talk about the security of absentee voting, early voting, election day voting, and then what happens afterwards, closing the polls, the unofficial results, the canvass, and post-election audits. But we don't have time to read 10 posters. I'm just going to tell you the 4 things that make Michigan elections secure. And the first one is people. The second one is technology and tools. The third one are cross-checks. And the fourth one is paper. So, people, the number one thing. What makes Michigan elections secure is that we have multiple people involved in the process. There are people at all the different levels. If you think about it, right, we have the Bureau of Elections, we have county clerk offices, we have local city and township clerk offices, and then we have an army of election inspectors that work together in a bipartisan checks and balances kind of way. And remember I said there's cross-checks? Guess what? Those cross-checks are sort of built in, that the people check the people. The people in the same room check each other's work, and the people at different levels of the process check each other's work. So, for example, the obvious one is, I know some of you are familiar with the canvass, the board of canvassers. We have the board of canvassers, remember, right here, Mary. So, the election inspectors are doing the work, that's what we call the poll workers. Election inspectors are doing their work at the early voting sites, at the absent voter counting boards, and on election day. Well, there's one from each party doing all kinds of critical tasks such as sealing the ballots, signing off on all the paperwork. Then, all that is delivered to the local receiving board, because each city and township has to have a receiving board. That group of people checks the work of the previous group of people, and again, it's a bipartisan team. And then the results are brought to the county, where we check it all in for accuracy, and then there's another check, a group of people called the Board of Canvassers, again, a bipartisan team. They comb through every single poll book from every single voting location, and again, do the cross-checks that everything was working. So the second thing I mentioned, why we're so secure in Michigan, technology and tools. We have, you've probably heard of QVF, Qualified Voter File. This is a secure system that keeps track of all the voter registration. Then we have electronic poll books. We have software that runs, software and hardware that runs the voting, the scanners, the tabulators, and also the voter assistance terminals. Again, these tools, we use these tools to check each other. And so the people use, for example, the tabulators, like the county level is where the ballots are programmed. This is my job. I love this job. Do you know in Washtenaw County we have 174 different ballots? has the right ballot, we test that against what's in the qualified voter file, like what districts everyone lives in, and then the tabulators are tested. Every single style of ballot, we call them ballot styles or ballot splits, every single one is tested. Every single tabulator that is used in an election is tested in what's called an accuracy and logic testing. And there's a prescribed list of conditions that are tested. Every community, every city or township has to also hold a public accuracy test. So if you ever want to see these tests, if you want to participate in, the League of Women Voters has lately gotten very active in the past couple of years of attending these tests. I highly encourage everybody to come and just witness it, how every clerk has to test the equipment. All the equipment is tested in what's called preliminary public accuracy test ahead of time, and then usually just a few examples. In the larger communities, they're not going to test all 53 tabulators in the public test. But we at the county, now that the county runs early voting sites for 24 of the local communities, we band together. We test the tabulators that are used in those early voting sites. And remember I mentioned those 174 different ballots? It takes the entire day. It takes the entire day to test all the different conditions that you have to test for all the different ballots. So anyway, that's just an example of how the technology, so the people check the people, and the people check the technology, and the technology checks itself, right? We check it against itself. So there's your people, your checking tools, and your cross-checks that are built in. Maybe it's not always cross-checks, maybe it's also, you can think of it as checks and balances. The fourth reason Michigan elections are secure is paper. You can't hack paper. Everyone is filling out a paper ballot. Those paper ballots are locked up at the end of the night. Those paper ballots are available for recount. Those paper ballots are available during the audit, which is that step number 10, which I didn't even mention, as yet another cross-check on the accuracy and the integrity of the systems. So paper is the official record in Michigan, right? If you've ever been at a precinct that closes polls, right, they push a button, and in many of our polls we have a transmission system that delivers the results to the county, and we have a special receiving station for that. So we get the results that way, but they also print out that tape, right? That tabulator tape, and multiple copies of that piece of paper, that tabulator tape that has all the results, multiple copies are printed, and they're placed in different places, right? One goes to the local clerk. Well, and then one goes in the poll book, which comes to the county. Another one goes in an envelope that is delivered to the Board of Canvassers. But guess what? That we call it the red envelope, or envelope number 2. On election night, the probate judge collects those. And so there is a copy of the results basically in 4 different places. A paper copy of the results in 4 different places. Plus, there's an electronic copy of the results that have been submitted electronically. And there's a media, there's an encrypted media that was in that tabulator that is purified in the night. And so there's all this duplication of results. But guess what? The paper is the official result until after the canvass. Actually, after the canvass, it's even the official result. The official results are these giant books. I have them in the basement. If anybody wants to see them, they go back over 100 years. You have to keep them for 100 years. It's pretty cool. But obviously, the other thing that happens is we upload on election night. We also upload the data that we receive at the county that's not for local races. It's uploaded into that, what I mentioned, the qualified voter file, QVF. So there's yet another version of the data that is, right? If you have multiple versions of the same data, that's a security system. And by the way, if all that stuff breaks down, you can still recount those paper ballots, which are locked in the ballot box. So this is what I want you to remember. four things. You got a lot of people involved, right? It's very hard to keep a conspiracy theory going when there's a lot of eyes on it. You've got technology and tools, and you got cross-checks. People checking people, technology checking technology, and people checking technology. And then you have a paper trail, and you have multiple paper trails. So with that, I want to talk about, to listen to what is concerning you. And I'm going to say, no questions are off limits. I'm happy to talk about anything. But actually, will you let me tell a little story first? So some of you that know me might have seen that I broke my foot. I broke the fifth metatarsal on my foot about, I don't know, it's been 8 or 10 weeks already. And so, of course, all of us that I have a technical background. I actually, before I became involved in elections, I was in material science. I have a PhD in material science and engineering, and I worked in the automotive industry, right? So all of us that think we're so damn smart, right? We think that we can, it used to be the College of Google Sciences. Now it's AI University, right? So I hear in the ER, oh, you did this to your foot or whatever, and so immediately, I go to AI University, I'm trying to figure it out. I go to the doctor, I'm like, no, you don't have that. And I'm like, oh, I'm so worried about this, I'm so worried. It's my job to worry about it, okay? I go back again, I get x-rays, multiple times I'm getting these x-rays. I'm loading them into AI, like they don't look, like my foot doesn't look like it's healing. I'm loading it into AI and it just, finally the doctor said, would you stop? I'm going to worry about it. You're healing just fine. I'm going to worry about it for you. It's your job to just get better. So, let's talk. I'm going to worry about it for you. When you bring it to my attention. If it's not something that I've already thought, if it's something that we've already planned for, that we can talk about, we'll talk about it. If it's something that I need to worry about, I want you not to worry about it. We'll tell you. If there's a real concern, you're going to know, right? It's going to be in the newspaper. We're going to be talking. I can't keep my mouth shut, right? You're going to find out if there's a real concern. So let's go. What's concerning you? Honestly, I saw this guy in the back first. So. Yeah.
I'm just going to address the elephant in the room. During his confirmation hearing in March, Mark Muller refused to outlaw the fact that ICE might be at polling booths. Is there a plan in place at the county clerk's office to protect voters against ICE presence?
Can you repeat that in the recording?
Yeah, repeat it.
I was wondering where the mic was. So I'm going to address the elephant in the room. During his confirmation hearing, Mark Wayne Mullin refused.
Mic is off.
Oh. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Closer to your mouth, Bo.
Okay. I'm going to address the elephant in the room. During his confirmation hearing in March, Mark Wayne Mullin refused to outlaw the idea that ICE may be our polling booths during the elections this year. Is there a plan in place at the county clerk's office to protect voters against ICE?
So let me get more information from you. What is the concern? Do we think that ICE is going to be positioned at every vote? Like, what do we think is, what are we really worried is the specific thing that's going to happen? And let's talk
I'm
about that.
primarily concerned that they're going to be targeting minority voters and acting as a fear-mongering factor to prevent that from voting.
Elaine, that's what I was thinking.
Right, okay. So that they're going to be stationed at polling locations and try to racially profile, it's called that, racially profile voters. Okay, so I want us to flip this around for a second, and I'm just going to say, we at Washtenaw County always follow the law. We at Washtenaw County train all of our election workers to follow the law. We in Washtenaw County and every local city and township clerk trains they are well experienced in the law and they follow the law. And they will do what they can to enforce the law. So if ICE agents are in the polls, they have to either, not anybody can just walk into the polls, right? You have to either be a voter, a worker, a challenger, or a poll watcher. And they have to, you can't chat. So, well, how do we see this playing out, right? Like, I'm going to teach my people to follow the law and to enforce the law, which they have always done. And so, if someone is trying to, hang out at the polls, I would also flip it around to say, we always follow the law. If there are no non-citizens here. These are only voters. All these voters are registered voters. Do you have any, they have to have a warrant to speak to a voter. And so, why don't we think, like, sure, ICE, there's the public area over there. And by the way, you can't have your gun in here unless you have the certification that you're a police officer certified by Michigan. So, if there's nothing illegal going on, which there isn't, right? There's nothing illegal going on in our polls, so there's no justification for people in the polls. Now, I know you're all looking at me going, that's like pie in the sky or whatever, but I think it's realistic to take a step back and go, what are they really gonna do here? Are they gonna really position people at every single poll? No, they're gonna target certain places where the population is, and so then you have to ask yourself, well, how are you gonna help these voters avoid being in a situation where they're gonna be intimidated? And so we can talk about assisting, like if you're concerned about certain voters, let's talk about how to avoid that situation, because all the workers and all the precincts are going to follow the law. And the law is pretty clear that you're not allowed to intimidate voters. The law is pretty clear that you can't carry your gun in a polling place. The law is pretty clear that you can't be in a polling place. The law is pretty clear that you have to be campaigning more than 100 feet away from the door. So they might be standing there.
Yeah, what about outside?
Yep, they can be 100 feet from the door
With their guns.
with their guns, asking.
People to prove their citizenship.
Yep.
They don't have to ask.
And the only people that are gonna stop that is us.
Yep. No, that's true. That could happen. But we have to follow the law, right? We have to follow the law. Even on your signal chat, right? You're following the law.
Maybe, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think that maybe that's why people are asking the question. Because, well, I'm sorry. I'm just.
Okay, can you manage a Q&A, because I'm sorry, I'm gonna get tunnel vision and miss somebody.
Well, I was just thinking, I don't know if people are asking the question, because when you mentioned, like, people are gonna follow the law, but they don't always follow the law.
Right.
And so now with everything going on, it makes the person like nervous, like when you normally go in the polling place, it's gonna be peaceful.
Right.
But you now say, well, why don't you have someone there? What makes someone think we need someone there?
So if, I
So
would
if
say,
it
yes,
happens,
yes, if we, the collective that cares about this, thinks that this is a real issue, absolutely, because guess what? You can have challengers there, you can have poll watchers there, and so I highly encourage everyone to follow the law and fill those polling places with the challengers. The challengers can challenge process, right? The challengers can challenge if someone is being interfered with because they are being racially targeted. So poll watchers, challengers, if anybody starts breaking the law, all your phones are coming out. You're videotaping it. The press is there. Like this. Just watch. We're all following the law, but you're watching it.
I want to follow that exactly. That we talked right into, like, we are going to be there.
Right.
And we are going to let our various organizations, MVP, as a whole bunch of people, right into it. Try not to touch the button. I'm not touching it. Just right into the bottom. So MDP as a whole structure, we're gonna talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. And other organizations, we need to be there. All of us, we can do it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know that at another event, I'm going to answer a question that hasn't been asked yet, which is, if you yourself or you know someone that is feeling like, I don't want to be there because this is going to be intimidating, well, then think about all the ways that you can vote, right? You can vote absentee, you can vote early, and you can vote on election day. And I love the combo pack, right? I love the combo pack. Get your AV ballot, absentee ballot sent to your home, fill it out at your leisure, and then take it to the early voting site and feed it into the tabulator. And so that's what I was encouraging people to do. But again, I want to flip it for you all for a second and go, that might be the best situation for you or for somebody you know who feels like they might be targeted or profiled because they have a last name that sounds like they didn't come from, the Mayflower boat. So, but think about the other kind of voter fraud that is actually more rampant, or the other kind of voter intimidation that is more rampant in our world that we like to admit is in the home. And people that aren't free in their home to vote their conscience, that is probably the biggest type of voter intimidation and voter fraud that we see. And I've talked about this with other election experts too. So if you know somebody like that, drive them to the polls, drive them to the early voting site, because then they have the privacy in the voting booth, and they're not being influenced in their own home. So sorry for that question that nobody asked, I just wanted to get in there.
One thing you consider when you volunteer at precincts, sometimes we have people at the edges to make sure that 100-foot barrier is followed by both sides, is if you see somebody coming but they're nervous, offer to walk them in. Have a friend buddy up with you. By yourself, you're an easier target.
Yes. I'll just say it loud. Who tests the machines? Is it your election supervisors, or is it the company who made the machines?
Good question. The question was, who tests the machines? Is it the company that made them? No, absolutely not. Every city and township clerk has a responsibility to test their machines. We at the county test the early voting machines. There is it's actually not the responsibility of the city or township clerk. It's the responsibility of the election commission for every city or township and county. But the election commissions usually delegate that authority to the clerk and the clerk's staff. There is even a provision that if you purchase, we call it the test deck. There's a big stack of ballots that test all the possible mistakes that people can make, and test all the possible combinations. If you vote straight ticket, but you change your mind down here, or if you vote twice, you check all these things. It's like about 55 different ballots for each ballot style, 55 different conditions, approximately. If you purchase the test deck from a vendor, you can't actually have a vendor. It's against the law for the vendor to run the test. The election commissioner, the clerk, has to actually run the test. A lot of the clerks, even the city of Ann Arbor, we got a lot of city of Ann Arbor here, right? The city of Ann Arbor still makes their own test decks, so they don't even use a vendor to buy those things. So, the manufacturers of the equipment do not do the testing. We do, and you can watch it.
I got the
Mike's over here.
Oh, Mike's there, yeah.
I was just curious if it's true that Elon Musk did own some of the machines, and if so, are there any that he will own in Washtenaw County?
No. I don't know if he owned machines or not, and there's a lot of rumor and speculation in Pennsylvania, I think, but
Right.
no. In Michigan, there are 3 approved vendors. They're up for new contract. It's been a 10-year contract. We in Washtenaw County chose the vendor that has the highest security and capability, Hart, InterCivic, and we love them. Larry, Clerk Kestenbaum is like already made it very clear that with the new contract, we're not switching. Some of the vendors that have issues, we don't use them. I personally feel very confident, I'm very familiar. I was a clerk for 21 years and used the previous voting equipment, and that had a lot more issues. Like I love the Hart equipment. I think it's very secure.
Thank you.
Hi, Rita.
Hi, Dirk.
There's been hundreds of people convicted of fraud. Heritage.org, you can look them up. There's been untold numbers of problems with ballots. I'm old enough to remember Florida's hanging Chad ballot. Are you aware of any voting machine that ever has been hacked? Because I can't think of a single instance where the voting machine was proven to be the problem.
No, but the whole Antrim County debacle.
Programming error, though, right? Which is why we use HART. We
Right.
can program our own machines, and they couldn't. They messed up the program.
Well, it was very more complicated than that. So, yes, there are, the Antrim County debacle was multiple failures at multiple levels, but the programming was an issue, but it was also, some did the testing after the programming changed, and some didn't, and some ballots were already
Machine,
issued.
though, right?
It was
Elon
not
Musk didn't
hacked,
affect it.
so
That was
the
a
only hack that I know of is, in electronic voting. There were electronic voting machines in Washington DC, and before they actually deployed them, they invited hackers. They were so cocky and self-confident that they invited hackers, and our own Professor Alex Hollerman here at U of M and his graduate students broke into those machines in some record amount of time. They reprogrammed, you know how the flag comes up and there's a little noise? They reprogrammed the DC machines to play Go Blue after the person voted, and nobody noticed for like 3 days. Not only did they hack into the machines themselves and change how things were going and, they hacked into the security room that they had the camera footage for the server room, and they even altered that to try to make a
So
point.
I read that report, and as a poll worker, if he tries to do that stuff, it took him minutes. He has to stand at the machine and like open it, like I will kick him out. But if ICE shows up at the poll, and I'm a poll worker with the legal duty to maintain order in the poll, or any nefarious actor, right? There's 2 instructions in county training. Thank you. 2 instructions in county training. Thanks, Larry. 1, if you got a question you can't answer, call the clerk. 2, if you think you need law enforcement, dial 911, which is a county sheriff. But if it's law enforcement that I'm concerned about, I need I'm a poll worker. I'm asking you because the county training is poll workers. What? Who's in charge? Is it the poll worker?
This
Is it
again,
local law enforcement? Is it the feds? That's a real
so
question.
each city and township has their own emergency plan, and
Okay, early voting.
early
You're right.
voting. I'm not talking in public about our emergency preparedness plan, even though because again, our poll worker training is for the laws, and then we have emergency procedures. So emergency procedures are pretty much, that if A, then call B. If C, then call D. And our sheriff, we have 3 people that we work with at the sheriff's department. And we are waiting to receive a memo from the Bureau of Elections on that interaction. Again, we can't tell people to violate the law. And
The
so
poll worker
if-
needs to know though, so I hope we
Right.
can figure that out.
The poll worker needs to know that I will never ask them to violate the law.
I'm just asking
And
who's in
so-
charge, that's a real question.
Yeah.
If I've got a conflict between different law enforcement agencies, I'm a poll worker trying to keep order in the poll. So the real question is who's in charge of the poll?
That's a great question, Dirk. One of the things that I'd like to know along the same lines, are the emergency procedures for the midterm election significantly different than the national election we just had? You tell us the details. I just want to feel a little more comfortable.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think it through, like what's different. So actually,
It's not a difference, it's a yes or a no.
well, yes. So, yes, I have been attending a lot of, what they call TTX, tabletop exercises, where you have to work through different scenarios. And I want to tell you all that I understand that this room is very concerned about federal intervention, federal agents, our own government interfering with our elections. But I will tell you that the intelligence community is extremely concerned about two things and how they interact. And that is the war in Iran. Actually, it's a couple of things. So the war in Iran has led to an extraordinary, like they're losing on the battlefield, right? Like our idiots just keep bombing them. Well, guess what? Their cyber security, their cyber attack abilities are like through the roof right now. And so Iran, Russia, and China in the past have always interfered with our elections in different ways. It is way worse now because of that those three countries' infrastructure that they previously relied on for disturbing things, making trouble, has not been dismantled. And now we have AI in the mix. So AI enables dumb bad actors. So now you have smart bad actors. So for example, they used to be able to quickly set up 30 robocall bomb threats. Well, now you can probably do 3,000 and use AI to tailor that bomb threat to make it seem more real. Like, the bomb is next to the red playground. Well, they looked on, right, they matched up the polling location with the red playground from Google Earth. So, I don't want to scare you, but I'm telling you that these conversations are happening and that there are perceived threats that are perhaps not as high on my list as other threats. And then I want to, you all know Dirk, and I'm going to thank Dirk because he asked a question about the tabular serial numbers, and it launched me into an investigation looking at all of our processes and considering, and to people in the room, they went, oh, well, the tabular serial, it's just on the tabulator, it's out in the open. And yeah, it's part of the chain of custody prior to and up to the election. But after the polls close, there's a different security issue at play. And by asking these questions, it made me go, oh, I have to reevaluate that, and I have to really think this through. And so anytime that you bring these concerns, we are thinking through things in new ways. But again, I just came to the conclusion after the last tabletop exercise, this is a stupid nickname for a security, bring law enforcement, election administrators, and cybersecurity personnel and together in one room, and you sort of do the what if, like, okay, the bomb threat was called in here. Okay, what if what do you do in the first 10 minutes? Then they change it. Okay, the bomb threat, now we found an unidentified backpack, then what do you do in the first 10 minutes? And so we work through these things. Is it different than last time? To a certain extent, yes. But to a certain extent, election officials, election administrators, we have had to do this all along. We have always had to have emergency planning. We have always had to have who do you call if. We've always had tornadoes and power outages and civil disturbance. It's just, everyone is at a bit of a heightened state right now. And so, again, let's think realistically about what we can do and how to keep your vote safe and those you love safe and those that you are worried about. Like, how are you going to help them? And let me worry about all this stuff. Bring your, right, what my doctor told me, let me worry about it.
You know, I think, my question is, I think we're gonna let you worry about it, but everybody needs to know that this is like the year 2000, okay? When I think that this is like the millennium again, when we plan for the clock, and that's not fair, it needs to be obvious. That's the issue. People need to understand that it's being managed in that high of a level, that's all. I mean, I have no doubt you're doing it, but I think that we should think of this as 2000 again. And all the planning.
And I will remind you that in 2000, there was so much work ahead of time and so much reprogramming. And what people thought giraffes were going to be running loose on the street and planes were going to be falling out of the sky. And
Well, they would have, but people
did it right.
did the
People
work.
planned and you know, I wish I could stand here and tell you it's going to be okay that we thought of everything. Of course, we didn't think of everything, but we're doing our best. Doing our best, and honestly, they can't be everywhere all at once, right? We have to conserve our resources and figure out what is the most likely threat and work on those things.
Okay, so second question for me. Poulson Guard has already established a precedent for seizing, y'all hear me?
Yeah.
For illegally seizing voting technology as she has seizing the polling booths from Puerto Rico earlier this year. Is there any concern that she might do that with the state of Michigan?
I don't care. Think about what I just told you guys. Think about what I told you at the beginning here. The paper record. Right after that, we have multiple versions of the results right after. And so if she seizes the tabulators after the election is over, it don't matter. The only time it would matter is if they seized every single tabulator before the data could be converted to paper. Before the data could be transmitted, before the media could be delivered to the county and uploaded to the state. There's just this very tiny window of time where, and you're all gonna be there with your video cameras, right? It ain't gonna happen. And so the voting machine by itself in Michigan is nothing except while it is married to the media. So by itself, it is not important.
Rena? So I've got one.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're all very, concerned about the threat of ICE showing up in such a way as to obstruct the polls, but we had a candidate forum yesterday, which talked actually not about polling, but about ICE in other circumstances. And it really brought out how there's a sort of a contradiction, because in terms of asking people to practice civil resistance, you can't ask an employee to do that.
Right.
You can only be there as a civilian. So I think that's something that we should all be thinking about, is how will we activate the civilian networks and be able to respond effectively, and maybe we can and maybe we can't, but I think we need to think in those terms. And of course we want our officials to say, this is what we know and what you can do, and to have an assurance of how the sheriff plans to respond to some extent, as much as, but there's a lot of contradictions in the situation.
Yeah.
But I did want to get over to respond to that if you want in a minute, but I did want to make sure that before we go to the next part of the program, that we talk a little bit about certain needs for protecting the elections here, because we all have in Washtenaw County imbalances in the polling staffing, in terms of there are the outlying areas which tend to be Republican, who have plenty of Republican poll workers and have a hard time recruiting Democratic ones. There's a specific situation for Ypsilanti Township, which is not part of the county system, so they are hiring their own separately, and perhaps the clerk there hasn't had a lot of experience in this job. So we wanted to ask, how many people are considering actually being a poll worker?
Yay, thank you.
Yeah. And we did want to particularly point
point your attention to the possibility of going to one of these polls. And actually, I've been out to Sylvan Township where there were more than the obligatory Republican. And it was really fun. They're really great people. If they're working on the polls, you know they're okay. Right? So anything else you want to say about that?
I want to thank everybody for, everybody that's willing to step up in some way, shape, or form. And again, I'm gonna say these words again. Like, we're gonna teach you to follow the law, and you're gonna follow the law as poll workers or challengers or poll watchers. Really, the opportunity is poll workers and poll challengers. And so, if someone, no one is above the law, except the Supreme Court says Trump is above the law, but no one else is above the law, right? And so if a person comes into a polling location and tries to break the law, you can be the people enforcing the law. You can, we are all going to be called upon to be there, to use our bodies and our mouths to say, that's voter intimidation. Here's, we give everybody the stupid little pocket guides, so you can quote the law, and you are telling them the law, you are enforcing the law. You are gonna make that person break the law if they try to, intimidate a voter or stop it. So, we're doing our best with the poll worker training. We will train you to follow the law.
I think there's like 132.
It's up to you.
Yeah,
We're probably going to take a little break before the next part too, but go ahead.
The complication, as you've addressed, Rena, is that there's so many different levels. And while you are striving, and I appreciate this effort for transparency, there are limits to it. Obviously. I mean, why? We want to be disclosing things that are going to make us more vulnerable. So, yes, it's important to be prudent and discreet. On the other hand, the idea of building a system, and I think Janet touched on this, of being able to communicate effectively and quickly when the need arises, that is also a system that needs development and coordination ahead of time. So to the extent that people can figure out how they can plug in without needing to know more than they need to know at any given time, that's going to be fun.
That's you all in this room. I can't do that. I have a system to communicate with my clerks, who I call my clerks, right? I take ownership of every city and township in Washtenaw County. Those are the people that I have to talk to, and they have to talk to their coworkers. If you want to have a watchdog system, a community network, that's awesome, do it. But I'm not doing that.
That's good to know. That's clear.
Exactly.
I just want to put a plug in, we're going to hear shortly from the Michigan Voter Protection Program. And the poll challengers are the eyes and ears on the ground at all the polling sites we're at. And I also want to just give a brief story about their level of responsivity. I was a poll challenger at Slauson Middle School about 6 years ago. And we had a Republican instructor then who caused the backup in lines and was contesting voters' right to vote. And soon we had a line of 10 voters who were not being allowed to vote. So at 7:10, when this started, I called what we'll hear about soon, the boiler room. When we have each poll challenger is given an emergency number that we can call should anything go awry. And we report conditions to the poll regularly. And I spoke to Ellie Sabat at 7:15 in the morning. And then it sort of launched a process where we were first visited by attorneys from the city of Ann Arbor, and then attorneys from the Secretary of State, who shut down this Republican poll disruptor so that people could vote and not be intimidated. And the system is in place, it works, but it's contingent upon all of us volunteering to be poll challengers and observers and hotline, the roles we're going to talk about. Because we make that system work. We're the eyes and ears on the ground. And there are resources in place to call when problems arise. You talk to the precinct captain, who talks to the clerk, who talks to Rena. There are extensive systems in place, but it really depends on having the eyes and ears on the polling sites. And we hope all of you will volunteer for a role that works for you. Is it? Anybody have questions?
I just want to mention another organization that's working on poll observation, and that is Smart Elections. Have you heard of them? Smart Elections is an initiative that is countrywide, where they're trying to get together poll observers in every state. And they're trying to establish trainings, they're doing trainings for volunteers for each of the steps in this. The poll takes, the audits, all of it. So if anybody's interested, Google Smart Elections, and this initiative is going on right now with training.
I appreciate all of that, but I also caution everybody that all 50 states run elections very, very differently. And so we really have to look to Michigan-specific training to be sure that it is Michigan-specific. And then, again, it's by county what equipment we need to use. And so things look different even in different counties in Michigan. But yeah, I appreciate all of the voter education things out there.
Tons of thanks to Rena. Thank you so much.